So the Prime card has now officially ended, which means there's been a total of 10 Misfits events over the past year and a bit, so I thought this would be the perfect time to rank each one. We're gonna rank these events based off of who was on the actual card, how many exciting fights there were, and how each fight ended. Was the card full of knockouts, or did we have a Vinny Hacker vs Deji moment? So starting from number 10, the worst Misfits boxing event has to be O06, and I think this picture describes itself. No one really knew any of these fighters except for Waleed Sharks, Le'Veon Bell, and the GOAT Chase Tumor, and there was only 2 knockouts in this entire card, including this one.
Whoa, hey.
You can also see people online saying how bad this card is, so I think this is easily the worst Misfits event to ever happen. So at number 9, we have Misfits O2 with Jay Swingler vs Churdleys being the main event. Although there were meant to be 8 fights on this card, Swarms vs Kristen Hamby, Tom Zanetti vs Jack Bean, and one of the girls fights didn't happen, but they did make one up by adding JMX vs Ginty. The only 2 good fights on this card was Slim vs Ryan Taylor, which ended in a unanimous decision win for Slim. Bars. Even though it was one of the bloodiest fights ever, and also JMX vs Ginty. But then, for the main event, I think we all knew what was gonna happen. I mean, Churdleys got KO'd faster than Pineda can complain for hitting him in the back of the head. Moving on to number 8, we have Misfits O08, with the Survivor Tag being the main event. Now, we've never seen a Survivor Tag match in boxing before, and although it was pretty entertaining, I wouldn't say it was as entertaining as the tag team matches, just because you're tagging in people that you're also versing, which doesn't really make sense. Like right here. B Dave was getting pounded harder than Adam 22's wife, but he decided to tag in this guy, who is also versing. But speaking of tag team, this card actually had one with Waleed Sharks and Dean the Great versing iPop and UD Gang. And this tag team stole the show. I mean, every single fighter was top tier in this fight except for iPop. Like, this man... This man was pure trash, and I have no room to speak. I mean, I think a 6-year-old can beat me up, but who let this man on this tag team match? And obviously, with Waleed and Dean having that crazy back and forth story since their first fight, it just added even more intensity to what was gonna happen. But this card only had 4 fights in total, not including the prelims, which is the lowest in Misfits boxing history, so there wasn't really too much action. Now at number 7, we have Misfits O09 with Idris Virgo vs Aaron Chalmers being the main event. So when you first look at this card, it seems pretty bad. I mean, there's 2 girl fights which are pretty nice to use as a bathroom break, and everyone else fighting seems pretty boring except for Face Temper and the main event. But this card actually turned out to be really entertaining from start to finish. There were 6 fights in total on the main event, where 4 of them ended in a knockout, and one of the fights that didn't have a knockout had 2 knockdowns, which is just insane. Callum Azard and OJ Rose displayed amazing boxing skills. Master Uguay may have to rename himself to Master Noob after what happened to him. Ginty brought out a pillow for Face Temper, saying he was gonna knock him out, but this man fell to the ground faster than a 4-year-old when their parents say no to McDonald's, and Idris Virgo displayed amazing skills to beat Aaron Chalmers by TKO. You can also see the top comments under the highlights for this card, all being filled with how underrated it was and how many knockouts there were. Moving on to number 6, we have Misfits O05, with the main event being once again Jay Swingler, but this time he was against Nick LMAO. Now the reason this is at number 6 instead of being number 7 or 8 was because this was the first card to have the tag team implementation, and also the main event was just an amazing fight while also causing some controversy. The first 3 fights were really boring, but then the tag team match came and it was actually really entertaining, with everyone online saying the same thing. We finally got to see the legend Pineda absolutely dominate the entire fight with his partner B Dave, and the crowd also got really into it and they took home the W. This card also had King Kenny vs Ashley Roxu, which was a good fight and a big upset as everyone thought Kenny was gonna win. Dean the Great vs Pulley Arif, which was action packed with Dean knocking down Pulley and getting the unanimous decision win. And obviously the main event where Jay and Nick were throwing bombs like they were aiming at the Twin Tower. Moving on to number 5, halfway through we have Misfits 007 with KSI vs Joe Fournier being the main event. Now this event had 6 fights on the main card, including some big names like Salt Poppy and Deji, and although Deji's fight was amazing, the Salt Poppy one was only 3 rounds and literally nothing happened, so it was pretty boring. This card also had the juiced up injector Virus vs DK Money, which had 2 knockdowns, and Virus won, but this man later pointed out that he injected testosterone in his body and he had 10 times the amount he should have had.
Oh shit!
that explains why he got up from this knockdown so fast. And then the main event, KSI vs Joe Fournier, was a really good fight until the elbow incident happened, which ruined everything. So overall, some big names, but not too much action in terms of knockouts, unless you obviously count the juiced up heads knockout and the KSI elbow. Now at number 4, we have Misfits O03 with the main event being cancelled. So I guess the main event was Waleed Shaiks vs Dean the Great, and this fight alone takes this card to another level. I mean, that was probably the best fight we've ever seen on Misfits Boxing, with Waleed knocking down Dean 3 times and then Dean coming back to get the win. Insane. But this card also had King Kenny vs DK Money, which ended in a KO victory for Kenny. Hasim Rahman Jr., a professional boxer, taking on Greg Hardy, which doesn't even make sense. I mean, Greg Hardy weighs like 870 pounds compared to Rahman's 15, but it ended in a unanimous decision win for Greg Hardy. And also Chase Demore vs Josh Bruckner, where this legendary clip was born.
What the hell?
Now the third best Misfits boxing event is the Prime card. I know, not the Prime card, but let me explain. The only good fights this entire card had was the tag team, Waleed Shaiks vs Dean the Great, and Salt Poppy vs Slim. And I guess you could say Ed Matthews vs Swarms from the prelims, because at that point, Swarm should have been like, why you gotta go and bring me down like that, yeah, ow. Nothing happened in the Whindersson Nunes vs My Mate Nate fight. King Kenny vs Anthony Taylor may have been the most boring fight in Misfits boxing history. Dylan Dennis ruined the Logan Paul fight with how bad he was. And KSI vs Tommy Fury was just a hugfest. This event honestly could have even been number 4 or 5, but the 3 fights mentioned were really good, and the entire atmosphere in the building and the build up to the event was also amazingly done. Moving on to the second best Misfits event, we have Misfits O04 with KSI vs Temper being the main event. I mean, this event was amazing. The first fight, Anthony Taylor vs Idris Virgo, had 2 knockdowns. Then we had Swarms vs Ryan Taylor, with Swarms turning into One Punch Man. This was also the first card to introduce mystery opponents, and when Pineda got announced, the entire crowd erupted with excitement. We also had Salt Poppy vs Josh Bruckner, which included a crazy knockout, Slim vs Tom Zanetti, which was an all-out war, and finally KSI vs Temper, where my man got 360 no-scope. And this means the best Misfits boxing event was surprisingly Misfits 001, with KSI fighting 2 people in one night. This card had some of the best fights and highlight reels ever. For example, the Salt Poppy vs Andy Worski knockout, the Slim vs Temper knockout, and Deji getting his first win. It also had some controversy with King Kenny vs Face Sensei. I mean, just listen to the commentators.
Can we get a recount?
And obviously KSI winning 2 times in one night, with Pineda becoming a meme. And because KSI opened the night, the arena was packed right away and the vibe was amazing from start to finish. So this is my list. Let me know in the comments if you would make any changes, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to never miss future videos.